7. If you like them, just shoot me an email and I'll charge your credit card. If not, here's a FedEx label to print out, send it back to me, my dime. This guy is phenomenal, and I saw him after 25 years because I had a 25th year anniversary party for the Main Street program. I went out and I asked him how many customers like me he had. I was there once on a business trip, and I thought, if he's got, 400 customers like me, he probably doesn't need many local customers because he doesn't have many local customers. And he said, I probably got about 1,000, 1,200 customers like you now. Wow. One-time visitor, really sharp businessman, all through personal relationships. Doesn't even have a website. This is all done through email and phone calls. But he's built that base. Now you think about the opportunities that you have. The people who come through here for recreation, for the lakes, for skiing, for college, whatever. Great opportunities to make lifelong customers. So it kind of, when you think about that sales void analysis, you can kind of almost put it aside for a second and say, okay, we have opportunities that go beyond people who live in the region. We have people who float through here from all over the country and all over the world, and they could be potential customers for us. So that's why you're, I think, underperforming when it comes to online sales. That's a huge opportunity. What 3 words come to mind as business owners when you think about downtown Cortland? Cumbersome.
Threadbare.
Yeah.
Challenge.
Red drugs.
Yeah. It didn't even spell challenge. And what types of new businesses would you like to see? Again, clothing, shoes came out big, specialty retail, movie theater, higher-end retail, fine dining, general store.
Real estate? Is that up there?
Yeah. So,
That would be nice if the people are coming to vacation and
Yeah.
the realtor could give them an apartment downtown and
Yeah.
then until they find a place, and put them out to Greek Peak or wherever they want to go, and
right?
no real estate up there.
No.
Pity.
So that's kind of what I've found. What I wanted to do now is to talk about 7, they're kind of trends or just things I'm seeing from what I'm seeing them begin to influence and affect how downtowns develop. And I think they're going to be kind of things that shape downtowns over the next decade or so. So some things to keep in mind as we start thinking about what these strategies might be. The first is obviously the impact of millennials.
Yeah.
They are the largest demographic cohort in US history. And they are shopping in very different ways from their parents and grandparents. Parents more than grandparents. They buy less than other generations have. They are very environmentally conscious. They want to know where things come from. This is a skateboard that has a QR code on it. You can scan and it'll show you where all the materials came from. Lay's has caught on. If you look at a bag of Lay's potato chips, they have a code number on them now. You can go to their website, put in that code, and it shows you where the potatoes in that bag were grown. Should you want to know that. There you go. That's where those came from. They are more likely to repair things than to toss them and replace them. They repurpose things. They take stuff and make them into new things. They like locally owned businesses. They like the one-of-a-kindness of it and the local aspects. They're more inclined to rent things, to rent certain things than buy them. This is a store that rents designer handbags. So instead of having to spend a couple of $100 on one for a special event, you can rent it for $25 for a week and then send it back. They buy things that last longer. This is a men's clothing line that has popped up called Hand Me Down, and they design clothes that are meant to last for several generations. Everything has a tag in it with lines, so the first owner writes in his name and the date he buys it, then the second owner, then the third owner, making it cool to have something that's been around for a while. They like to live near where they work. They like to work near where they live. And they really value and seek out interactivity. This is the second thing, animation interactivity. And this hit me a few years ago. This is a guy named Ben Cameron. And the time I heard him speak at a conference for the League of Historic American Theaters. I was on their board of directors for a number of years when I was on the staff of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And so he was speaking at the League of Historic American Theaters conference, and he's speaking to people who run theaters or the theater operators. And what he was saying basically is, if the programming that you're showing in your theater, the plays, the musicals, have a beginning, a middle, and an end, you've lost millennials, because they're not linear thinkers. They're multidimensional thinkers. They think like a web search would happen. You go deep, you go wide, you bounce around from, here's the letter B, let's go to Bolivia because it's blue. They make these wide associations, and your programming, you better get interactive or you're going to lose this generation. And that stuck with me, and I started looking around in downtowns I was going to, and I found interactive stuff popping up everywhere. This is a neighborhood that embedded these bronze dance steps with directional arrows in the sidewalk, so you see it, and you grab somebody, do a little tango step, and then you go on. Crosswalk painted as a keyboard, poem painted on the side of a building. This is, I forget what you call these things, but you look at it head on and you can't see what it is, but then you look at it at an angle and a picture emerges. Really sort of, small touch to enliven the physical environment, make it more interesting walking around downtown. This is in Nashville. This is a traffic switching box. You see those all the time. They've wrapped these with labels for Nashville recording artists, and on the back of them, since the boxes have electricity in them, they have a small directional speaker, so when you walk by it, you get a blast of that person's music, kind of reinforcing what Nashville is known for. This is an animated window, storefront window. It's a men's clothing store. They filmed this guy doing these jumps and maneuvers against a green screen, and there's a little heat sensor on the front of the storefront window. And when somebody walks by, it picks up the heat and activates this video loop that they have. And some people walk by it, don't even notice. Some people walk by it like they have a heart attack. Some people walk by and just stand there and stare at it for a long time. It is so simple to do. They basically just have a scrim in front of the storefront window, an LCD projector like this in the back attached to the video loop with a heat sensor that activates it. The reason I've put this in is because it's a great way, this kind of thing, and there are many examples, the lower tech ways, to keep storefront windows interesting when the store is not a retail store or it's vacant. And so it's a way to keep people moving along the sidewalk and entertained, almost like having the downtown sidewalks be street theater. And is a great thing to do for a community where you're still filling in storefronts. There's the guy on the green screen, and there's the setup. Sidewalk, the IR camera, the heat sensors, projection screen, computer, and the projector. We could do it with stuff in the room tonight, probably.
Maybe the mentally ill that walk down Main Street every day would really not have a good time with that.
Perhaps.
They would not.
This is another example. This is a little bit more sophisticated, but this is basically a holographic dog that senses when somebody is there, and they've programmed into it a few gestures. So the dog senses if you're hostile or friendly, and if you're hostile, it barks at you, and if you're friendly, it comes up and and acts like it's sniffing your hand. I've seen many lower tech things like this. There was a town in rural Kansas that I worked with that had a photographer who lived there at the turn of the 18th, 19th centuries, who did photographs of prairie life, early prairie life, and they had all these glass negatives that they chose a great selection from them, enlarged them onto storefront with sheets of vinyl, clear vinyl, and basically put them on the insides of storefront windows, left the store lights on at night, and made it a drive-through photo gallery. So, and there's another kind of low-tech way. This is an optometrist office that put these blinkies in, so when you walk by, all these things are blinking at you. Interactive stores themselves. This is an example I told some people about at lunchtime today. This is a store called Bodega. It looks like a bodega. It is a bodega on the inside, kind of messy. But there's this Snapple juice machine in the corner. And on the floor right here, there's a switch, a button that you can stomp on. And when you do, the door of the Snapple juice machine opens up. And behind it is a men's clothing store called Bodega. Wow. And they sell mostly sneakers and kind of street clothes. They're doing $1,800 a square foot in sales, which is up there kind of in the Barney's range. It's just astronomical because people love the you know, the uniqueness of going in and making that Snapple door open up and go in. And they sell good stuff too. Yeah.
So where is the store at?
It's in the Jamaica Plain neighborhood of Boston.
It's really cool, because I'm wondering how it would be different, because Cortland has a very different culture
Yeah.
than, for example,
Sure.
where the store is. So how do we sort of account for the culture of Cortland when we think about ideas for businesses here?
You think of things that would work here. I mean, there, you know, you've got a strong sports culture. You could have all kinds of businesses that kind of play off of that. Lots of possibilities. This is sort of an interactive exercise in engaging the community and thinking up potential uses for vacancies. This is an artist, actually a street artist from New Orleans who did this, named Candy Chang. And she made these stickers that say, "I wish this was," and put them out on the sidewalk with Sharpies, and people could slap on this storefront window what they wanted the store to be. And they got some consensus over the course of the week. This is another cool interactive thing. This is an apartment building that was rehabbed, renovated for use primarily by musicians, and it has a recording studio in the ground floor. So musicians can go in there and record themselves, and if they want to, they can let it be broadcast on a Wi-Fi station in the downtown area. So they have a light that goes on saying recording now, and you can tune in online and hear what's going on in the recording studio. There's their control panel. Trend number 2, trend number 3, the environment, and concern about the environment is beginning to influence downtowns in great ways. One is that communities are beginning to, I think through, maybe we shouldn't be building so much retail stuff because we are losing sales, and we should be, you know, confining our retail containers. Another is a greater appreciation for the intrinsic energy embedded in existing older historic buildings. Back in the 1970s, when there was the energy crisis, gasoline shortage then, Booz Allen Hamilton did a study for the National Park Service of the amount of energy embedded in different building materials. And one of the things that has stuck with me over the years is the amount of energy that it takes to manufacture 8 bricks, haul them to a construction site, and place them in a wall is equal to a gallon of gasoline. So I figured out once how much energy is embedded in, you know, one sort of 20-foot by 100-foot, you know, 3-story downtown storefront building. And it's enough to keep the average American driving for about 12 years. In DC, about 3 weeks, but, and also equals, like, one building, this little building, equals 1.3 million aluminum cans worth of energy. We recycle cans all the time. We don't think about tearing buildings down sometimes. And downtown buildings are inherently energy efficient because they were designed at a time when they had to be. They weren't reliant on mechanical systems. So they had things like, you know, awnings that actually worked, that were operable. And you can see, let me look at this, you know, postcard, which side of the street the sun is shining on at that time of day. You would adjust your temperature by adjusting the awning. Big transom windows that would reflect light back on, you know, brightly, you know, shiny, white-colored or silver ceilings to get light back into the store. Relatively narrow and deep buildings with shared party walls so that you're only losing, you're you know, just exposed to a 20 feet of air instead of a wider distance. Windows that open up so that you can, on a hot day, open the front upper sash and the back lower sash and get that figure-8 air circulation going. So, you know, people are beginning to appreciate, oh yeah, this is really a great energy resource that we have. And it's showing up in businesses too. You talked about Ithaca and its, you know, its used vintage clothing stores. All kinds of interesting vintage used product stores are popping up all over the country. This is one called Pass the Baton, and there's just tons more of them. Another big trend is the sharing economy. In ways similar to millennials renting, you know, purses or guitars and trying them out before buying them. People are choosing to share things instead of buying for themselves. Everything from Zipcar, Airbnb, sharing their time. This is a website called Fiverr. You guys seen this? People will, for $5, they'll do different tasks for you, like, you know, record a birthday greeting for somebody, or, you know, call someone or design something. Another big trend is local capital, and this is tied into another I'm going to talk about in a second. Crowdfunding has become a pretty significant tool for downtown development. This is an example of a bakery called Sweet Bar in California that was opening up and raised its starting capital, or a piece of its starting capital, on Kickstarter. There's its Kickstarter page. Their goal was to raise $20,000. They raised $21,000, and they did it basically by selling things like the naming rights to muffins, or cooking lessons with their baker, things that were pretty small and achievable, and they raised the money they needed to get started. This is one from Lynchburg, Virginia. It was a cafe that people in the community loved. The owners retired and closed it, and people wanted it back, so they raised the money to open it themselves. Found somebody who was good at running the cafes to operate it. The next trend that's related to this one is developing businesses versus recruiting businesses. Recruiting independently owned businesses is really hard to do, because if a business is independently owned and they're located in a town 30 miles away and you want them to come open a store here, that they have to have a really great store manager or business manager, because they can't be in two places at the same time. Capital needs are big, so it's kind of it can be a challenge. You can sit around and wait for somebody to come and say, I want to open a blank business, and it might be a business that fits your overall strategy, or it might not. Or you can say, here are the 5 or 10 most important businesses that we think we need for our downtown. Let's find somebody who's good at operating that kind of business. Let's find people who have the capital. Let's put them together and actually develop the businesses that we want. And there are lots and lots of models of this popping up. This is sort of the department store model, I would call it, sort of a small mercantile company. This one is in Port Townsend, Washington, and the community has, through selling shares of stock for $100 each, 80% of which have to be bought by locals so that control of the store doesn't leave the community. They raised money to launch this small department store. That was sort of in response to a proposed Walmart that wanted to come, and they were like, you're too big, you're not what we want, it's not a good fit for the community. We get the point that we can use a department store, we're going to start our own. This is a company called Fundrise, a couple of developers who are surveying neighborhoods, this is in Washington, surveying people who live in neighborhoods and saying, here's a building that needs renovation, what kind of business would you want in there? And then people in the neighborhood can buy shares of stock and be investors in the company they create for that building and actually help create the business that goes in it. They're enormously successful, and they're working all over the country now. Another example, this is from Port Washington, and it is a group, it was about a dozen investors who got together, pooled their money, started a few different businesses downtown, mostly restaurants, and also then developed the first new housing stock that came into the downtown, looking over the water. Really a gorgeous property. It was, pre-leased before they even broke ground on that, all done with local capital. So rather than sort of waiting for, the developer or the right business person to come along, sort of be more proactive and take the lead on that. Another big trend is small industry coming back into downtowns. There was a time when most of the businesses in downtowns in America were small industries, whether it was the blacksmiths and tanners and bakers and lumberyards, things like that. And then we kind of went crazy with separating out land uses with Euclidean zoning, and so we made it harder for small industries to be in downtowns, but they've always been there. And they're coming back in bigger numbers now. And they're really kind of fascinating because they can be interactive. They strengthen the employment base downtown. They create more of a market for downtown retailers. They're people who probably want to live in the downtown. This is an example I mentioned at lunch today too. This is a guy in Rising Sun, Indiana, who makes harps. He makes concert and Celtic harps. Everybody in Rising Sun who needed a harp now has bought one. There's no new local market demand. His customers find him online or through word of mouth. But he's in a storefront. You can see him sitting in the storefront window making harps. So it's like entertainment, very engaging. You can wander into his store. He's happy to give you the harp story. He sells these t-shirts that say love a harpist. There are only 86 strings attached. Remember the strings they have. And you hear this harp music wafting down the sidewalk all day. It's an amazing business. There is no local market demand for it. But that's where he wanted to be because the quality of life was good, the environment was great, prices were low. Again, I think you guys have some advantages here in developing businesses like this that would really add to the character of the district. but may be completely independent of local market demand. There's another example. This is a guy who does custom woodworking in Cuero, Texas. You know, his tools are right there in the storefront window, so you watch him working during the day. This is a brewery. We got one of those. Apparel designer. This is a guy who makes custom weather vanes. This is the same town. This is Beverly, Massachusetts. This is a company that this couple started called Theological Threads, and they make religious vestments for priests, imams, rabbis, everybody you can think of. They've got 20 people working for them now in a former auto body shop. This is a business called White Star Manufacturing. It's in Texas. It was a guy, a tailor, there he is, who made, you know, sort of one-off clothing. He would make wedding gowns and stuff like that, do tailoring. And remember when that clothing factory collapsed a couple of years ago in Bangladesh, killed all those people? Right. All of a sudden there were some clothing designers in the US who had been, you know, making all their stuff offshore, who thought maybe we should bring manufacturing back, and they couldn't find anybody to do it. So this guy kind of caught on to that and expanded, partnered with a community college to teach people how to do sort of commercial sewing, clothing manufacturing. There's their facility now. And he got contracts with Jones New York and Ann Taylor to make clothing. So really kind of pretty amazing things. Again, there was an academic connection there. You guys have some opportunities there. Yeah?
Can you talk about some of the kinds of things that the community, the practical things that the communities are doing to support these particular kinds of business? Because a really richly creative business, it's really challenging to come in and then have the appealing skin,
yeah,
and to communicate what it is you're actually, you know, what
right.
value you bring.
Right.
How
so I'm one of these people who thinks every business person should kind of focus on what their core competency is and what their core interest is. Mm-hmm. So I think that, like, you know, people who are passionate about retail should run their retail business and maybe not go to so many committee meetings. They should just focus on that. That's their role in making the downtown great, is running a great business. Right. Not learning how to market stuff online necessarily. That's the role of the partners that you have collectively. It's the role of the downtown organization, the colleges, is to fill in those gaps and sort of provide the expertise to then work with the business owners to help them unlock these opportunities. Because it's just too hard for everybody to be able to learn to do everything on their own. Right. So you really need to partner well. When you think back to that drawing I had of the 4 points of Main Street and the strategies and how that spins off into who's going to do each task and that's where you can plug in partnerships to say we need somebody who can work with business owners to improve their window displays. We need somebody who's creative at visual merchandising to do something with the vacant spaces downtown to animate the storefronts. We need somebody to work with people on getting their online storefronts to work better. So, partnerships. And then the other thing is global reach. Like I've talked about, there are, like the guy with the harp and the shoes. This is a store in California called Kippy's that specializes in women's Western wear that sparkles. Everything they sell has like sequins and sparkly things on it. There is apparently a global market for that, and people have found this business, and you can, you know, walk into the store, you can buy stuff online. This is a woman in another town in Iowa, Keokuk, Iowa, who owns a Carhartt store downtown. Keokuk is a small town in the middle of nowhere, and it is a dirt poor community. It is really struggling in many ways. How you would think would she have one of the few Carhartt specialty stores in the country. She does, you know, 80% of her business online. This is the map in her store that she showed me of places in the U.S. where she has customers where she shipped things, and she has customers abroad also. She was very clever, and she sent a press release to the Wall Street Journal about 10 years ago, talking about, you know, Carhartt clothes and how durable they were, and then here's some other durable clothing brands. They did a story, and they featured her in it, and bang, it was like all of a sudden the world could find her. They have a large farming community there, they have a large industrial community, and so people who need Carhartt clothes can now get it right downtown, but that's really not what makes her market work. If she had to depend on local sales, she wouldn't succeed. So the global reach is, this is a business that specializes in pecan products, ships them all over the place. So lots and lots of possibilities. So those 7 things I'm seeing sort of shaping how downtowns are evolving in terms of their business mix, in terms of housing coming downtown, in terms of new kinds of industries coming downtown. What do you guys think? Some possibilities for Cortland? Okay. So today was my first day here. I had a chance to look around. That was really my goal for the day, was just to kind of get to know the downtown and to also drive around the community and see what's in those 10 and 20-minute drive time areas. And I thought I would give you sort of my assessment of what's good and what's bad. Ready? So in terms of strengths, you have great buildings. You have fabulous historic buildings downtown. They're visually cohesive. You know, you've got a couple of little brutalist things popping up here and there, but for the most part, everything hangs together. You don't have giant gaps in the core streetscape, and that's a really, really great thing. It's compact and walkable. I mean, you can walk from one end of the district to the other in, what, 10 minutes? Yeah, the largest workforce in the county, 5,100 people working downtown. Downtown is an economic dynamo. It's a government center, you've got college students, which not only mean you have customers, but it also means you have a potential pool of entrepreneurs who might stick around and launch new businesses. You have businesses that attract customers regionally already. You're doing something, they're doing something to get people into the district. There's an opportunity there to capitalize on that and figure out what else could we do. I asked Adam when I was looking at the bridal gown store and the formal wear store today, are there other bridal businesses here? Is there somebody selling wedding gifts? Is there somebody, is there a kind of a cluster of that? Because you've already got a magnet. Tourists, you've got all the people who come through the area because of its scenic beauty. You've got new investment happening in buildings.